Video games are a very interesting medium. They can give you an experience no form of entertainment can give you. You can really feel like you are the character you're controlling and experience what they are experiencing in the game, and feel like you have a connection with the characters in the game, and feel as you're in a whole different world, and experience like a life-changing story. But do you ever just want to go apeshit? Fighting games have been around ever since Heavyweight Champ was released in 1976 for arcades. It makes sense why they've been around for so long. They have the simplest objective, which is simply beat your opponent. When you go into a fighting game for the first time, see all the inputs you have to do. You may not understand what any of it means, and it can be very intimidating. But once you start to get a hang of it, you start to understand that there are just a few selection of buttons you can use, and you use them in different ways to put off different combos and supers and all that kind of stuff. Over the past 2 years, I've really gone into fighting games. Though I'm not the greatest. I probably lose more online matches than I win, but it's really not about winning. It's about the experience of playing the games and improving how you play. So I've decided to take 7 fighting games that I've played throughout the past 2 years, and I'm going to take a look at them and evaluate them on how they play. I'll mostly be focusing on the main elements like gameplay and characters, but I may bring up the story or some other aspects here and there. So without further ado, let's get started with the first game. One Punch Man is a very entertaining show, and it's really funny. It also has some really genuinely cool scenes. I'd say it's definitely worth watching, at least season 1. Sentiment I see a lot is people don't really like season 2. But I don't have an opinion on that since I've never actually seen it. The game isn't like the other games on this list. This is a 3D fighting game, which means you fight in a circular arena with more movement. This is different to 2D fighting games where they only let you go from left to right. I'm not a big fan of 3D fighting games, I much prefer 2D ones. Doesn't mean they necessarily have to be bad. I really like the Dragon Ball Tenkaichi Budokai games, but they feel more like an exception to the rule. I've noticed a trend in anime games being 3D fighters, and by trend I mean I can pick like 5 right now, one of which isn't even out whilst I'm making this. If you want an example of a good fighting game based on anime, then you'll probably have to wait a bit. The fighting in this game, while not terrible, is very bland. There's so much variety in your moveset. You even have the ability to hold L2 and press one other button in order to pull off a super. Whereas in most fighting games, you move the directional pad or joystick in a certain direction, and then press a button. While it's seemingly simple, it's an input that takes a little bit more for an effort to pull off. So actually landing a super makes you feel like you earned it. Just pressing 2 buttons at the same time is very bland and simple. Really, you don't have to think about what you're doing. The most thought you have to put into it is which one you want to do and if the opponent's blocking or not. You can choose a few different types of fighting styles, but aside from the psychic style, I don't think any of them feel that unique or makes you want to use them in any sort of way. Probably best just to stick with the standard style, since it's the first one you get. I think the cast of characters is alright. I haven't unlocked them all, but I've pretty much got all the characters I actually care about. Other characters I don't care about, like Purple Piccolo, and whatever the hell this thing is. I think the best thing about this game is how they use Saitama, because you can't actually play as him. Instead, you can put him in your team, and there's a time limit. And when the time limit runs out, well, he does what he does best. There's also your own original character, Do Not Steal. I haven't played it in quite a while, so when I opened the game I got jump scared by the name I gave my character. The stages are really bland. They don't have anything that makes them feel unique or makes you want to play certain stages over others. The music is actually pretty good. I like the menu music. It sounds like a Persona 5 song, because as we all know, Persona 5 invented jazz. I kinda wish I could talk more about this game, but there just aren't that many things that make it interesting. I think it commits the biggest crime an anime fighting game can do. Being boring. aka Street Fighter 6, is the most recent game in the Street Fighter franchise, and also the most recent game released on this list. Street Fighter really is the fighting game franchise. Even my dad knows what a Street Fighter is, though he does call every fighting game that.
That's Goku.
I think this game is a big improvement over Street Fighter V, though 5 isn't a terrible game, at least in its current state. But it still feels like a mid-tier fighting game. Also, the style is pretty ugly. Ken looks so horrifying the way he got levels. Street Fighter 6 also plays very well, and it looks really good. Probably because they give devs actual time to finish their game. That's a joke on how the development of Street Fighter V was very rushed, and it was very, very stinky. Let's start off with the character roster. I think the starting roster is pretty close to perfect. It has a good mix of old and new characters. You have the characters you'd expect like Ken or Ryu. They also have characters I didn't expect to get much attention like Luke and Jerry.
Woo! Yeah, baby! That's what I've been waiting for! That's what it's all about! Woo!
The gameplay is really enjoyable and smooth, keeping that Street Fighter feel while also making the controls more similar to modern fighting games. Speaking of modern, a new feature of this game are the modern and dynamic controls, which are both a pretty neat feature to have, though I don't use them since I prefer how classic controls feel. But these new control options make the game more accessible to new players and could help them get more used to fighting games, eventually easing them into using classic controls if that's what they want. I do have a problem with the microtransactions in the game. I'm used to modern fighting games having DLC. I'm not the biggest fan of when half the roster is locked behind DLC, but it makes sense. Having to add a whole new character into a fighting game means you need to create a whole new moveset of animations, but it's also having to balance them out with the rest of the cast. What doesn't make sense is having to spend money for virtual currency to buy cosmetics and a battle pass. Ever since Fortnite decided to be the biggest thing on the planet, people have decided that they can do battle passes too. But what they don't get is that Fortnite is free, and the battle pass has items that people could find value in. Instead, you get a battle pass in a fully priced game, and the items in the pass don't appeal to most people. I guess it's not forced onto you, but it's a pretty big stain on a game that is really good for the most part. There's also a story mode, which is surprisingly good. I mean, it's not great. I don't have the urge to finish it. I prefer more personal arcade stories. But it's still really fun to play, and it gives more life to the world of Street Fighter. Also, you can just go up to people and just start fighting them, which is fun. Overall, I still think there's some things this game needs to iron out, and has a lot of potential. But even so, it's a really fun game to play. I like Jerry. Jerry is cool. They should make the game about here.
Nowhere to run. Persona 4 Arena Ultimax.
I've been waiting for this!
Persona 4 Arena Ultimax is a spin-off game to Persona 3, and another Persona game, but I can't remember which one. As someone whose second favorite game of all time is Persona 3, I have some pretty high expectations. And also as someone who has certainly played Persona 4, I have no expectations. I'm kidding. I think Persona 4 is a really good game, and has a lot of good writing and storytelling. I just think it's a bit overrated and probably the weakest mainline Persona game, at least the ones that I've played. I played a bit of this before playing Persona 3. I actually own a copy of Persona 4 Arena for the PlayStation 3. But we're talking about Persona 4 Arena Ultimax here, so get that out of here.
Get it the fuck out my sight.
Let's start with the cast. I think they all play pretty well. The velvet attendants are a bit tricky to get a hold of from my experience, since they control a lot differently from the other characters, which does give a bit more variety to the cast, which I really like. My favorite characters to play as from Persona 4 are Chie and Yu. Chie has a very fast fighting style, which is good for stringing together combos. And I like Yu because he's the main character, and so he's the easiest to control out of anyone in the cast. Also, he has a very cool sword, and has the same voice actor as Ichigo Kurosaki from Bleach. From the Persona 3 cast, I like playing as Mitsuru and Aigis, mainly because they're my favorite Persona 3 characters who weren't completely ruined. Mitsuru has a cool rapier, which is kinda like a sword, and a Persona has ice abilities that allow you to freeze your opponent. Speaking of Personas, that's actually a very neat feature the game has. You can use them to attack, but that also makes your Persona vulnerable to being attacked itself, and if they get hit enough times, they become unusable for a certain amount of time, and adds another layer to the fights, which I find to be cool. Anyway, back to the characters. Aigis is the best character that's ever been made in all of humanity, She also plays really well. She has attacks that fire bullets, but there are a limited amount of bullets you can use per round. So it really makes you think if using an attack that will use up bullets is worth it or not. Or you can just fire a minigun non-stop until your opponent repels. Aigis also has her Ogia mode. She gives her access to a few new attacks, like firing missiles and spinning with fire. I would like to play with some other characters more often, like Ken, but I'm not the biggest fan of his playstyle, and after all, he's just Ken. Actually, he's not just Ken. Koromaru is there with him, which is a cool addition. I think some final thoughts on the gameplay. I think the supers are really cool, especially Aigis's. The instant kills are definitely the best supers, I just think they're a lot of fun to watch. So there is a pretty big flaw with the gameplay, and that is the auto combos. You do learn to get around the auto combos, but they're still annoying to deal with, and makes winning feel less rewarding in general. The music is from the other Persona games, so of course it's good. That being said, there's some original music made for this game, but is it any good?
Yes.
The last aspect I want to talk about is the story, how the characters are handled. I don't think the story is very good, it's a bit too convoluted and boring, it's being set up in a confusing way. The only good part about the story is Labris, who is a new character introduced in this game. But I wouldn't say it's good enough to actually play through the story yourself, just watch it on YouTube or something. The cast of Persona 4 still feels pretty consistent from the actual game. I don't really have any problems with them, except for characters I already don't like Rise and Teddy. Now, with the Persona 3 cast, there's a notable downgrade in quality for them. I think characters like Mitsuru are fine, still relatively consistent with their character in Persona 3. I just feel like they've kind of made her into a gimmick character, which is a terrible direction to take the best character ever written. But she does get some good moments here and there, and they're still pretty good, but I really wish she was just utilized better. Now, the main character I have a problem with is the one and only Akihiko
Sanada. I've been waiting for this!
He is probably my second favorite Persona 3 character, and despite being kind of silly at times, he feels like a real person with real feelings. You can give him an S-Link in the fantasy route, which isn't perfect, and I feel like mischaracterizes him a bit, but it's still great at showing how good of a character he is. Though why would you romance him when you could romance peak fiction, I guess? Back to what I was saying, Akihiko in Persona 4 Arena Ultimax is awful. In this game, he's basically just a joke. The joke being he trains and likes protein. You might be thinking, how is that a joke? The answer is it isn't, it's not funny. Spoilers, but in Persona 3, Akihiko realizes he spends too much time training and focusing on getting stronger, and that he ignores the important things in his life. He only realizes this after his friend he's known his whole life, Shinjiro, is killed. This moment is very tragic for Akihiko and everyone involved, but it gives Akihiko the chance to grow as a character. Akihiko seems to have forgotten all about that though, because in Arena Ultimax, Akihiko has left his friends to go around the world to get stronger. His character development is clearly undone, and he's simplified to a single gimmick, and I really hate it. I'm sorry if I'm coming off a bit too strong about this. It's just a video game. I like it. I care about my boy. My baby boy. This is supposed to be a video about fighting games, so I'm gonna shut up now before I go on around about how cool Aigis is or something. Overall, this game is fine and fun to play, but I have a lot of problems with it. I actually own a physical copy of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure All-Star Battle R. God, these names are so long and weird. Luckily there isn't any other game on this list with a worse name. You might be thinking, because I own a physical copy of this game, I must like the series, right? No, not really. I like part 4 and 7, they're some really good parts. Everything else ranges from mid to genuinely dog shit. I just want to mention that beforehand, just to clarify I may be a bit biased in certain aspects. Starting off with the gameplay. Overall it's pretty fine. They can be pretty stiff with stand use characters. A lot of them play really similarly, mainly because a lot of Stan's powers are just punching stuff. Though I think it's cool how you can turn stands off and on, though it doesn't really make sense for some characters to fight without the stands, like Kira, He just looks weird trying to fight hand to hand. I think it's more fun playing as non-style users though, since characters like Young Joseph and Gyro are a lot more quick with their attacks, which I find makes the fights more fun. I think for the most part, the supers are pretty cool. I'm a fan of Jolene's 1000 Throws and Dio's Road Roller, because how could you not be? I think Dio is probably my favorite character overall, mainly because his voice performance is just so funny. The game's visuals stand out, but not in a very good way. I think the JoJo art style doesn't fit well in this kind of 3D animation style. In some of the openings for JoJo, they are actually animated in 3D, and they look pretty good. But this game probably didn't have as big as an animation budget as the show does, so the 3D feels kinda off. Also, there's a reason Part 4 and 5 didn't have 3D openings. It just didn't fit the style of those characters, and you can see why in this game. The words wet paper come to mind when looking at this game for some reason. Moving on to the cast, it is very large. This would normally be a good thing, but it feels like there are a lot of characters who don't really stand out as much. You could play as one of the main characters of the series, or you could play as a bird from that one episode. But don't worry, if the bullet cast isn't enough for you, there are some DLC characters you can buy, like Who? And that's just a straight up Nazi. I feel like I could have been more positive about this game. It's pretty fine for the most part, if a little boring. You'll probably like it if you like JoJo, but you could probably just play Heritage of the Future, which is a better fighting game, and was made by the same people who made Street Fighter 3. The game isn't available on any online storefronts though, so the only way you're playing it is if you're a Dreamcast and are willing to pay a lot of money for it. If you don't want to do that, then I hope you like One Piece.
I'll be king of the pirates, I'm gonna be king.
In my opinion, Guilty Gear is one of the best fighting game series out there. It has a wide cast of cool characters, fun and fast gameplay, and really good music. Then there's the lore that's weird as shit, and it doesn't make any sense to me, but I still think it's amazing. I was originally going to take a look at Strive, but I decided against it because I wanted more variety in the list, and I didn't want to only review the latest fighting games, especially since Strive is still getting updates. Also, I have mods installed in Strive, and I'm not willing to give Raiden Kai for this video.
Doctor, turn off my cringe inhibitors.
I really like the cast of characters in this game. There's a lot of them, but it's not overwhelming. It was a lot harder to pin down a specific character I like to play as in this game. I really like characters like Saul, Kai, Johnny, and Baiken, but that's probably because they all have cool swords. I think Saul and Kai are definitely a bit too easy to play to be my overall favourite, so if I had to choose between Johnny and Baiken, it'd probably be Baiken. I just think having one arm and wielding a sword is cool. Swords are just cool in general. Also, Baiken kind of reminds me of Zoro. The gameplay is really great. Really just need to play it for yourself to really get an understanding of it. It just plays so well and it doesn't feel limiting at all. I think the stages are really good too. They also have a pretty unique feel to them. I'm a fan of the Japan and the Heaven's Edge stages because they look so cool and dramatic. But almost all the stages have something going on in the background, which really gives them a lot of depth. The music is also a standout feature of this game. My favorite track definitely being Ride the Fire, which is the song that played at the beginning of this video. It's not a song that you can choose, instead it only plays when Soul Bad Guy activates his Dragon Bull during a match, and that alone makes it one of the best supers in any fighting game. If it weren't for there being a Persona game on this list, this would easily have the best soundtrack of all the games on this list. I really recommend this game if you want to get into Guilty Gear, or fighting games in general. It's a lot of fun to play, but for the love of God, Saul, stop killing your wife. It'll only divorce papers. It'll end up like Ken. And not that one, the other one.
Saul, win!
I only just started playing this game recently, so I'm pretty new to it, but I find it to be a lot of fun. Also, who decided to call it that? Apparently, the CL-R is pronounced clear, so you learn something new every day, I guess. I discovered this game through a different fighting game called Melty Blood, since it was made by the same devs. I decided to check out the other games the devs had made, because I found out the development team was called French Bread, and so of course I needed to investigate. This is how I found out about the Under Night games, and seeing they had a game coming out next year, and the games were on sale at the time, I decided to try it out. Opening the game up for the first time, I found that I really liked the game's art style and the character designs. It's got a really nice pixel art style that I think feels more unique than a lot of other fighting games with a similar style. The character roster is pretty small, but the game makes up for it for having really good characters. And I'd say the entire cast is really fun to play, with the exception of Waldstein. He's a very big character, and therefore he's very slow, which makes the style kind of clash with how fast-paced the gameplay normally is. That doesn't mean he's a bad character to play as, I'm just not a fan of big and slow characters in fighting games. Speaking of characters, the two characters I enjoy the most are Yuzuriyu and Enkidu. Though Yuzuriyu is probably the best character because she has a cool sword, so it's not even a competition. There's a lot of other characters that I like, but I think I'd be here all day if I talked about all of them. I will say though, Byakuya is probably my third favourite, mainly because he kind of looks like you from Persona 4. Wait, didn't I make that joke already? I find the stages to be pretty cool, but they don't really stand out that much, and I don't feel like I have to go on certain stages over others. I also do find the music in the game to be pretty good too. It goes really well with the game's tone, and though I haven't gone out my way to listen to any of the tracks outside of the game, I definitely could see myself doing so in the future. In the end, I still need to play more of this game, but I do really enjoy it and will most certainly be playing more of it. Aside from a few small complaints that I have, Under Night In-Birth EXE Late Clear is a great game and a real pain in the ass to say.
悪いんだが、今はお前と遊んでる暇はない。先を急ぐんでな。
For the final game of this video, I've decided to keep my favorite till last. Now with the other two anime tie-in games, I mentioned how I felt about the series, just to clarify that I may or may not be biased in some regard. With this game, I don't have to clarify that, because even though Dragon Ball is probably my favorite shonen series ever, with the exception of maybe One Piece or Chainsaw Man, I hadn't watched Dragon Ball when I first played this game. In fact, this game is what got me into Dragon Ball in the first place, and it's what got me into fighting games in general. I first played it on Game Pass, and why not, right? It'll be good fun for like maybe an hour or two. Now let's take a look at how much time I've played it across all platforms, excluding Xbox, because as far as I know they don't track your game time. If you add all those numbers together, you get I need to go outside more often. Getting into the game, there are a lot of characters, at least if you pay for the DLC. The game is often on sale, alongside the DLC, so overall it's not too expensive if you buy it during sales. It's still kind of annoying that a huge part of the cast is locked behind DLC though. Speaking of cast, the character roster is really good. Unlike most of the other games on this list, you can choose up to 3 characters to play as. But in local battles, you can change it to have only 1 or 2 characters in the team. The 3 characters I probably use the most, and I would consider to be my favorites, would be Kefla, Base Form Goku, and specifically Super Saiyan Blue Gogeta. When it comes to Gogeta, he has a wide variety of moves, and supers, they're all visually appealing as well as making it very fun to play as Gogeta. With Base Form Goku, his most useful quality is his Spirit Bomb, or Genkai Dama. His B assist charges up his Spirit Bomb, and also gives you a level to use for your super. If you use the assist 3 times, you'll be able to get 3 levels, and Goku's Spirit Bomb will be at its max level, which gives you the opportunity to use Goku's Spirit Bomb and then use Goku's level 3 super, which is his bigger Spirit Bomb. This is probably my favorite thing to do in any fighting game, it's always very fun to pull off. Finally, Kefla is pretty easy to get a hold of. He hits fast, and so it makes it easy to pull off long combos. The supers are also cool, but he doesn't have as much variety as Gogeta. Those are my favorite characters, but there are quite a few others I like. For example, there's Goku, 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 and Trunks. I think the main thing that makes all the characters appealing is that they all play similarly, but their attacks are vastly different. And every single attack is based on a scene from the anime or manga, which really goes to show how much detail was put into the game. The stages are pretty cool. I like how if you deflect Ki Blast, they'll hit something in the background. I would have liked if the stages had some more variety. 2 of the stages are in the same location, just one is at noon and the other is in the evening. Stages having their own music does help them stand out a bit more. So I'm not really going out my way to listen to the music in this game, as I am with games like Persona 4 Arena or Guilty Gear. There's also a story mode in this game, which is probably the only thing I dislike about this game. But in all honesty, I don't know a single person who plays fighting games for their story. Though the story does introduce the character of Android 21, who I think is a pretty cool character, and she was actually made canon with her cameo in Dragon Ball Superhero. I've said a lot of weird names today. There's a lot I want to say about this game. There's just a lot of cool stuff in it. All the little details really add up. Like how if you defeat a certain character on a certain stage, there's a cool cinematic based on the actual scenes. I think I've talked long enough, so I'll wrap this up soon. But without this game, this video would most likely never have been made. That's kinda weird to think about. What I'm trying to say is, this game is a 7 out of 10, too much Goku. So let's just get straight into it. At last place is One Punch Man, a hero nobody knows. Another basic 3D fighting game, but with a twist. It's worse than bland, and has a single good gimmick. Man, I really wish nobody knew about this game, am I right? At number 6 we have JoJo's Bizarre Adventure All-Star Battle R. Alright for the most part, but doesn't strive for anything past mediocre. 5th place is Persona 4 Arena Ultimax. A fun spin-off with quite a few flaws. The game does have high gusto, so that's really cool. So whenever I see the word protein now, I start having flashbacks to what they did to my boy Akihiko. Coming in 4th place is Street Fighter 6, a step in the right direction for the Street Fighter franchise, especially after Street Fighter 5. It's more accessible, and though there are some things to be improved upon, I am optimistic about this game's future. For 3rd place, I chose Under Night In-Birth EXV Lady Claire. A really fun game, I can't wait to play more of it, and experience more fun, fast-paced combat. Then 2nd place is Guilty Gear XR Rev 2. From a series with absolutely insane lore, but really cool and interesting characters. I'll probably be playing this game and Strive until I'm dead. And of course, 1st place is Dragon Ball FighterZ. Simply the peak fighting game experience. It got me into fighting games and Dragon Ball. I have spent too much of my time playing this game, and I will still be playing it after I am dead, because it's Dragon Ball and death means nothing. So that's the list, so if you disagree with me, you can stop, and instead comment about how my opinion is objectively correct, and all others are blasphemy. I kinda wish I could have talked about other fighting games like Marvel vs. Capcom or Skullgirls, but I want to sleep eventually. I'm very excited for the future of fighting games and the future of already released fighting games. I also hope we get better anime tie-in games, but until then I'll have to deal with the best anime tie-in game being Fortnite.